Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It's Sunday, January 11th, 2026, and welcome to another installment of Dr. J's Thoughts and Reflections. If you stick around toward the end, I have a special announcement that I think you might enjoy and hopefully benefit from. So every culture and every religion that we know develops ideas about death, right, and what happens after we die, beyond the purely biological sense. We know that every person who's ever lived and every organism, for that matter, eventually is going to die, right? To cease the vital functioning. And basically, what we mean by death is just the end of life in a particular biological form. From a cultural perspective, though, human death can be viewed in a variety of different ways. It's, of course, viewed as the great equalizer that visits the rich and poor alike, everyone, no matter their gender, their race, ethnicity, creed, or status. It's also often used as a reminder of how precious our brief time on the planet might be viewed. That we should somehow make most of every moment, if you will, or live every day to the fullest. You're probably quite familiar with those expressions. And death in many cultures and the major religions and beyond has been viewed as a kind of gateway to the next phase of our humanly existence, or the conduit through which the human soul and our spirits must pass to a place we cannot truly know until we finally get there. And as you well know, humans have developed lots of beliefs and cultural constructions and narratives about the hereafter, or what happens next. There are the Dharmic religions from the Eastern cultures with their cyclical belief systems about life and death and reincarnation, and much more, of course. We have the Abrahamic religions that stress monotheism, one God for all eternity, and a combination of an earthly life, a judgment day, and some kind of an immortal soul. And many, many other cultures who have, at times, again, depending upon where you're talking about in history and parts of the planet, have espoused different forms of animism, of their spirits, or they believe that the spirits of their deceased loved ones continue to participate actively in their lives, or they believe that, again, it's all forms of matter, all natural things have some kind of a distinct essence or soul, and much more. And whatever you personally believe, and that includes if you're an atheist or agnostic, there's still the question of what really does happen. And I personally, of course, don't know, and neither do you. I don't know the answer from a spiritual or a scientific standpoint, despite having read and thought about these issues for the better part of 6 decades. Either I'm a slow learner, or these are quite difficult, if not impossible, issues to finally answer. So if you're looking for certainty, or to have your specific beliefs or thoughts about all these things kind of reaffirmed or reconfirmed on the matter of life after death, then you'll need to consult others who are far more confident in their descriptions and definitive in their beliefs than I am. So instead, today, what I hope to share is what I know from my own near-death experience, and that is NDEs, they're called, for short, from 5 years ago. And what I've learned from that, or at least a bit of wisdom that I think you might find helpful in the aftermath. So I've talked about my own NDE, my near-death experience previously in the vlog series. I'll leave a link or two if you're interested in hearing more of the details in that regard. I'll just remind listeners that I did die twice, back on May 13th, 2021, for about 2 minutes max each time, completely dead, no pulse, nothing. And as I've also mentioned, that's where I'd have remained forever. That is dead, were it not for the presence of a guardian angel who came to my rescue, aka my wife Farnaz. So yes, she literally saved my life twice, and after several days in the hospital and now a permanent regime of blood thinners, the saddle pulmonary embolism that killed me has disappeared completely, and I have no traces or symptoms, or haven't had any since then. And so, by the way, it's estimated that PEs kill about 100,000 people each year in the US alone, and roughly 10,000 people in Canada die each year from various forms of PEs or blood clots, other kinds as well. It's not nearly as common as things like cardiovascular disease or cancers, but still, that's a lot of people. But I'm one of the lucky ones. my wife was there. The EMTs got there within probably 5 minutes. And then I received perfect care and treatment in the hospital. And here I am. Okay. Revived, brought back from death, born again twice. So what did I see when I was dead? And what did I learn from the experience of having died? What wisdom can I bring back from the great beyond? Well, first, and sorry to disappoint, but I have no great stories or memories, vivid images of being dead. Some of you will recall I spoke and how I do remember the last moment just before I died. And my last thought was, some type of kind of frustrated resignation, like, crap, I'm actually going to die. And there's nothing I can do. That is actually basically what I was thinking. I knew it was the end. And so it was kind of resignation. It's like, I can't believe it. That's it. I wanted to live, but I realized that at that moment, it really wasn't my choice. There was quite seriously nothing that I could do about it. And then, lo and behold, I was gone. And so the thing is, I don't remember then. After that, I don't remember anything. I don't remember seeing anything. I don't remember feeling anything. No hovering above my body and looking down upon the situation. No bright lights, no warm glow or friendly face of God. No long, beautiful tunnel or stairway to heaven, but of course also no fires to hell or Dante's circles of hell. Nothing. I don't remember anything. So that's my data. I do remember, however, coming back to consciousness. I remember, not vividly, but I remember the process just in general of becoming conscious again and awake and alive, etc. And, asking questions and eventually, being transported to the hospital, etc. But I got nothing, if you will, from what it was like to actually be dead for the few minutes that I was dead. So I'm going to set aside the question then of what happens after we die, because I still don't know and still don't have any definitive proof. I only have the knowledge that I've gleaned from my own studies of religion, from what other people have experienced and written about, and from my faith, if you will, beyond science. In short, so I still don't really know. But I can tell you what the religions say, and I can tell you what the sacred texts say, to some extent. But of course, you can find all of that out for yourselves. You don't need me. And especially if you already practice a particular faith tradition, or if you're already atheist or agnostic, again, you don't really need me for any advice or insights into that regard. So instead, what I thought I could do was offer something helpful in terms of the aftermath of having died and having come back, the results of my NDE and what that's taught me about life and reinforced, and what's changed, really, as a result. So first, let me share the words of another NDE survivor, somebody by the name of Deborah Prume, who wrote this article last September that I read online, where she talked about her own. She had 2 NDEs, and she talked about them like decades apart, but she talked about them in great detail. And at the end of the article, here's what she wrote in part. My own NDEs brought the finiteness of life into sharp focus. I rarely procrastinate now because I'm never completely convinced that I will be given the gift of another tomorrow. Although that outlook may seem gloomy, it's not. That conviction has caused me to pursue my passions, to learn how to paint portraits, figure out how to play my mandolin up and down the neck, and to save up and buy a 22-year-old pickup truck so I can transport my bike and kayak more easily on adventures. Keenly aware that my life will reach its end at a specific time, I feel a nudge to squeeze the most out of every minute. End quote from her article. And that's a common theme that I've seen expressed in the writing of others and the testimonials about their NDEs. And that is the idea of the experience of dying, albeit temporarily, obviously, results in most people kind of cherishing their lives all that much more. And then that latter point then about not wanting to waste any time, as Deborah stated, not wanting to, quote, squeeze the most out of every minute, end quote. And so I understand, and I do share that view to a certain extent, but I also want to disagree with that last statement in a certain sense, at least in terms of the advice that I would offer, shall we say. I'm not disagreeing with Deborah's or others' perspectives or what they've concluded or that they want to get as much out of life as they can or out of every moment. I get that, and that makes perfectly good sense. And it's commonly accepted that we know, we're going to only live about 100 years or so, give or take, right? So we should value and appreciate our fleeting time here. My issue is with what it means when we talk about getting the most out of every minute. Now, if that means enjoying every sandwich and every slice of pizza, well, then I fully agree. The implication, though, of trying to get the most out of every minute sounds remarkably like the endless challenges that we face every day. That is, when we talk about getting the most out of our time at work, or getting as much work done as we can while on the job, getting the most caloric benefit from our meals, getting the most out of our workouts at the gym, getting the most out of our relationships, and so on. This whole notion of getting the most out of, as opposed to giving, as opposed to other ways of looking at our experiences moment to moment. So I simply here want to offer a very modest proposal or idea to shift the focus on our effort from constantly striving and doing and getting the most out of every moment, which again can be important in certain circumstances, to be fair, to the focus then on being. And partly this is a projection of my own kind of lifelong yearning and learning, as I call it, which still persists to a certain degree. And so I've always felt that push to be doing something, striving, trying to achieve, trying to be successful. And, the other side of that is not wasting my time, wasting my life. Heck, even I can remember going into grade 9, going into high school, and I remember deciding then that I wouldn't waste my life or my teen years getting, wasted. I don't know how sophisticated I actually was in my thinking, but I do remember making a conscious decision that I wasn't going to do alcohol or drugs anymore. Not that I was a heavy user, but I did use in middle school. And by 14, though, I was completely sober and made the decision that I wasn't going to touch these again. Oh, maybe that was a little bit much. I did get hammered a couple of times as a young adult, but actually I've rarely had any alcohol over the last 4 decades. So I have a beer once or twice a year type of thing, and that's about it. And I haven't done any kinds of other drugs, illicit or illicit, really, since all the way dating back to 1975. Yes, it's been more than a half century since I last had a bong hit. And now it's legal. Go figure. Anyway, and I say all of that not to be judgmental of those who use alcohol or drugs, but rather because I found that for me personally, being drunk or being high would take away from my ability to be productive, to get good grades, to do the things that I really wanted to do with my life. And sure, all that stuff could be fun, but I didn't really like the trade-off. Like I remember one time I was 13, go figure, it was a friend of mine, we got drunk the night before, and I had to get up and deliver papers the next morning, but I had a heck of a time. I had a headache, I was still feeling a bit drunk and definitely a bit hungover, and boy, it was torturous though, finally getting there, and I couldn't wake him up because he was just, he was out of it. And I did have to manage to get home and deliver those early morning papers. And so that was a horrible experience. That one was actually a bit of a game changer in and of itself. So in sum, no one had to really convince me to be more achievement oriented, to set goals, to work hard, try to accomplish as much as possible, at least in accordance with my abilities and resources, etc. And my faith taught me too, and this is the other part of it, my faith had taught me that if I worked hard, did the right things, lived the good life, that we'd be rewarded in the end too. Not always again in this life, but certainly in the hereafter. So that was kind of a powerful motivator as well, because I had learned early on I was a sinner and I needed to become a better person and I should work hard, and do good things every day to reap the benefits, if not necessarily in this life, then certainly in the eternal reward of life everlasting, right? And so do you see the parallels then between the doing what we can or doing as much as we can with every moment, whether we've experienced an NDE or not, and the idea of doing as much as we can in this world so that we can enter the gates of heaven or whatever our conception is of the afterlife. And that's where my NDE actually taught me something a bit different. Okay? So on the one hand, I do still see the value of working hard, doing the right thing, whether you believe in an afterlife or not. At the same time, the biggest lesson that I've learned is the importance of just being and not necessarily always doing. But it's not an either or proposition either. Okay? So we can still be focused and determined to do what we believe in, what's important to our lives, and in terms of our work, in terms of our very survival, and certainly in terms of our relationships. At the same time, and this took me almost 6 decades to finally and truly understand, we can appreciate being and living in this moment. Not because we're accomplishing something great or vital or unique, but rather just because we're grateful to be alive. That we can laugh or love or just sit quietly staring out the window. And that these are the blessings, the true blessings. Especially if in being we are able to set aside the desires and the wants and all of that stuff that's related to striving and working and accomplishing. So instead of asking, what did you do today, or what did I do this morning, that sometimes that's appropriate, to be fair, I learned to ask more questions about the being part of our existence. When I'm asking, how are you? I'm more interested in your very being rather than your doing. How are you, your state of being? How are you experiencing life? And you should be vigilant too about not just what you're doing with your life, although again, that's obviously important to an extent, but your being in this life. Are you being the kind of human being that you'd like to be? And are you experiencing then joy and contentment, fulfillment and peace in your life accordingly? Or are these elements where you're struggling? If you're trapped in thinking, well, I haven't done enough today, or I've wasted the hour, I've wasted another day, then you're trading in the happiness and the contentedness of being by being a slave to doing. And trust me, there's always more you can do. There's always more to be done. That'll never end. That's the natural cycle of the human experience. I take that as a given. So instead, what I try to do is spend more time, much more time these days, on the being aspect of our existence. Being the best person I can be, or the best version of myself. Being much more in the moment and experiencing life in the moment. And then whatever I do as a result of that flows much more naturally and affirmatively, and usually has positive results. And so my being reborn after my NDE has meant trying to appreciate each day, experiencing gratitude more regularly, enjoying every sandwich. One of the greatest pleasures I experience every day is simply waking up and being with my wife. We don't have to be doing anything, just being together. Do you recall the old story, or it's an adage, I don't know where it comes from exactly, but that the older geriatric couple and their response to some question, somebody interviewing them about how often they made love, right? And the woman responded, oh, every night. Could have been the man responding, it doesn't matter. And the perplexed interviewer said, wait a minute, every night? How is that possible? And she explained that she and her partner held hands every night, or hugged before they went to bed, before they went to sleep, I should say. Right? And so by that definition, yeah, I'd say the same thing of my relationship with my wife. And that extends so much further, right? To the shaking of hands and the hugging of people not only in your family, but beyond as well. So again, not lovemaking in any sexual sense, obviously, but what I'm talking about is rather just being a loving person. Okay? So we don't say I'm doing a loving person, but rather I'm being a loving person. Again, this is very different than doing things to achieve success or just doing things to make us happy. The mindset shifts to enjoying as much as we can our lived experiences moment to moment. And for those who believe in God or the Creator or some form of infinite or universal intelligence, it's akin to saying that we can find God in every moment. Imagine that. So, and then the mindset then helps change how we respond when life does throw us the occasional curveball or presents us with a big challenge. You still have to ask at times, what am I going to do about this situation or in response to what's happened, right? But I'd encourage you to invest more time in thinking about how you want to be or the kind of being you'd like to be as you respond. And that's going to make all the difference. It's about a paradigm shift from one that places most of our effort and worth and reward on what we are doing each hour of each day to how we are being on a regular basis with ourselves and with each other and with nature and the universe. And so that leads to my final point today. Over the next several weeks then, my announcement, I'm going to be using the vlog to do an online course for mental health in what's obviously or seemingly a chaotic and angry world that we live in, at least for many people. And so the series is going to focus on shifting from the dominance of the doing mindset to a being mindset, and how at the very least, being able to balance your doing and being can lead to a much healthier and peaceful daily existence. And of course, this is all free of charge. The payoff comes from anyone and everyone whose mental health and well-being actually improve as a result. And then the positive changes then that you'll be creating, not just in your own lives, but in the world writ large. And so I hope you'll learn the greatest lesson of all that I learned from my own NDE and my second chance at life. But I'd love to see you make the important changes that you need to make, or maybe that are long overdue, of your being reborn in some senses, but hopefully without having to go through that whole dying thing that I had to go through to get there, right? So in a nutshell, hopefully you'll gain an appreciation then for being yourself and the importance of being, as opposed to, again, our more exclusive focus on the doing aspects of our lives. And by the way, how to balance these two concepts, not just philosophically, but in a practical day-to-day sense. Discovering, perhaps rediscovering the importance of being yourself, valuing your own beingness, I think is often the first and most important step to get there. And the cool thing is that once you've truly accepted your own beingness, your own being, you'll find yourself more able and willing to accept other beings and able to live increasingly in harmony with others. And who doesn't need that? And if you're not happier and more content by the end of this online course of the vlog series, I'm going to refund every penny. All right, as ever, until we meet again, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs and kindness in abundance. And we'll see you soon.